Hello, and I'm really excited today to have Dr. Irene Kopp with us, especially in this interesting time in the history of medicine. And for many years, I've said this is a very exciting time to be diagnosed with MS, and that freaks some people out, and some people just don't understand it, but it is. And the reason I say that is because we live in a time where traditional healing practices like naturopathic medicine, like traditional Chinese medicine, like Ayurvedic medicine are coming together with the new science to provide us with an emerging paradigm. And yes, it'll be a while before it's in your doctor's office, but it is available out there. And we're going to talk more about what Dr. Irene is doing in that field today. So, first of all, I want to remind you about what transforming health naturally means. It's not one thing, it's not even two things, it's everything you do to bring your body back into a place of balance, or a place of, we call it homeostasis, where your body knows what health is and it knows how to get you there. We just need to access the right resources to do that. So, Dr. Irene, many practitioners do what they do because of personal experience that they've had. You've got a super interesting story. Can you share that a little bit with our listeners today?
I would love to. Thanks so much for having me here, Terry. The you can say your mess is your message, right? And that is so very true for me. Years ago, I was physically burned out and didn't know it. I was a doctor of chiropractic. I did acupuncture. I was a neurophysiological meditation instructor. I did everything right in my life. And I still crashed and burned physically. No, I hit the wall literally. For those of your listeners, I know you're in Canada,
Uh-huh.
uh, Terry. I literally lost consciousness and drove straight into one of those massive three-story rock faces in northern Canada,
So you
and
literally hit the wall.
I literally hit the wall.
Wow.
Absolutely. And I broke 10 bones, needed to be cut out with the jaws of life, and that wasn't the worst of it. The worst of it was that my 2 young sons were in the car with me.
Ye-
They were 4 and 6 years old at the time, and my 6-year-old son witnessed what adults at the scene were throwing up at, so he developed PTSD. My youngest, my 4-year-old son, sustained a catastrophic brain injury. His Glasgow Coma Scale was the lowest you can have, and he needed to be airlifted to the nearest pediatric hospital, Sick Kids in Toronto, and they didn't know if he was going to live for a good 2 to 3 weeks. And even after undergoing emergency life-saving surgery on his brain. And it was during the first SARS. So for those of your community who may not know, s COVID is a SARS virus.
Right.
And so they couldn't call it SARS because they had already used that name. So the
Right.
first SARS,
So the
this
first
happened
wave,
during the
current
first
pandemic. Yeah.
Right. So this was during that time, and I was in hospital on complete bed rest, like lying flat because of all the broken bones on SARS quarantine.
Oh,
I
great.
couldn't see my kids. I didn't have any contact with them aside from 15 minutes a day where I read them a bedtime story. And that was after they finally decided that my youngest son was going to live. And
Wow.
the prognosis that they gave him at that time was that, and this top neurosurgeon in the world said he's not going to walk again, he's not going to talk again, and he's not going to pass high school.
Wow. What a story.
And yeah, and because I was on SARS quarantine, couldn't have any visitors, let alone my sons. I was going crazy for fear
Mm,
of them, for them, and not knowing what was happening. I was getting these disjointed reports from third person. For a while, they didn't even know mom existed at a different hospital, kind of thing, and I was going crazy for fear, but more than the fear, I was going crazy and spiraling down in guilt and shame
mm,
and remorse that here I had been doing everything and pushing myself so hard so that I could give the two most important people in the world to me the best life possible, and I almost killed them.
Mm.
And my inner judge and jury,
Right.
the peanut gallery,
Yes.
they it was like a hung jury. It's like, yeah, you don't deserve to live. You don't deserve your kids. You don't deserve, right? You almost killed them.
Mm.
And I literally, it was the lowest point of my life. I remember vividly laying in this dark hospital room, tears coursing down, bawling. I was bawling. I'm not a pretty crier like Demi Moore. And I was like, why me? Why did this happen to me? Because I did everything right.
Yeah.
I ate well, I exercised, I did like all the
Right.
lifestyle things. I was a meditation instructor, I did yoga, everything. Why
Mhm.
did this happen to me?
Yeah.
And there was self-pity in there. I freely admit it.
Well,
There was like massive self-pity.
we'll give you a
And
pass on self-pity card.
well, yeah, that kind of went hand in hand with
Right?
the poor me went hand in hand with why me.
Mhm.
And finally I realized I had a choice. I could continue to spiral down into like literally like a quicksand of guilt and shame and remorse. Or I could give myself grace and understand that I was one of a statistic, one of hundreds of millions of people, and we could now say billions of people after the last couple years
Mm.
who have been under chronic stress and who are burned out and are either on the slippery slope to burnout or who have crashed and burned. And that not only what I realized was this: yes, society is partly to blame because they know it, they accept it, and they expect us. Right? We are programmed to give, give, give until we're bled dry. We're programmed to
Absolutely.
believe that we have to achieve to be worthy.
Yep.
We don't expect a baby. We don't look at a baby and go, "Well, I'm not going to feed you until you prove to me that you deserve it."
Right.
No,
Yeah.
right? Somewhere along the way, this glitchy programming is instilled into us, and it takes many different shapes or forms, and the vast majority of it is you are not worthy
Exactly.
until you prove
Yep.
that you are worthy. You are not lovable. You are not valuable until you prove yourself.
Eh,
And then you throw in a huge dollop of trauma.
right.
And I had an abusive childhood,
Uh-huh.
and a lot of trauma due to, my father having massive PTSD from atrocities he witnessed while in the army and experienced.
Mhm.
And so what I realized is that I was set up for failure.
Right.
In other words, even though I did everything right,
Yes.
there
That
were these massive
right. Yeah. I hear that a lot.
everything right.
I hear a lot of people say, I don't know, I eat healthy, I exercise, so same as you do everything right, and yet there's
Right.
still something more.
Exactly. And that was what I recognized, was that with my education
Mhm.
and clinical experience and then personal experience, I realized like deep down inside that I had been set up for failure
Mhm.
by that glitchy programming, by the traumatic upbringing, right? By the fears that had been instilled in me, the victim patterns that had been instilled in me, which are part of programming. I tease them out because they're so important in and of themselves. And that was a massive energy drain. Think energy like Dementors. I'm a geek when it comes to superheroes. I don't know about you, Terry.
Oh yeah.
And so like Harry Potter and the Dementors and how they just
You suck you in.
suck the
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
right out of you, right?
Absolutely.
That is what our glitchy programming does. That is what the trauma
Mhm.
does. That so we can do everything right and we will still be set up for failure and we can still crash and burn.
Mhm.
And may I give an analogy
Oh,
to
dude.
explain? It's actually a story.
Great.
It's a
Love
story.
stories.
It's a true story. That's
Excellent.
the
Even
best part of it.
better.
It's a true story. Yeah.
Ah,
I love you, Terry.
ah.
You're just like me. You're like, "Yes!" Alright, so my dad died right before COVID started.
Oh,
That's not the fun part.
yeah.
However, it does play into it. And my brother traveled from across the country. This was right before COVID. and, so that we could plan things out. And we were sitting having a glass of wine. I admit it, I like good wine. And we're we're chatting away, and he got up to go do something, and he accidentally, like, hit his red wine glass, and it spilled all over the keyboard of my beloved 10-year-old MacBook Pro.
Oh my God, I can so relate to the 10-year-old MacBook Pro.
Can you? I'm
Oh
just like,
yeah.
I loved that
Oh
MacBook
yeah.
Pro. It was just like, I babied it along. Because I was like, "I don't wanna get another one, I love this." It's
There's
like
nothing
I
wrong with
love
this one, right?
woodworking, even though I immediately turned it upside down and tried to do all the things. It was like, it was gonzos. And so this was and this point, it was like COVID, like, was, like, coming down the pipeline. I couldn't make it down to the city. In Canada, I live in the boonies. Here's the thing, Meaford's beautiful, and it doesn't have an Apple store. So, we do have an Apple authorized dealer, and I hiked over to not hiked, I drove over to Owen Sound and managed to get into to Palantir Computers in Owen Sound. Great guys. If you ever need that, if it's any of your listeners are in Ontario. And all they had there at the time that suited what I needed was an iMac. I'm like, great, I'll take it. I need a computer like now.
Now,
So
yeah.
they transferred the data really fast. I think I was sitting at a Tim Hortons while they were doing it. And then I took my iMac home and I set it up and I'm like, there's part of me is it's like a brand new car, right? It's like, oh, brand new computer. It's still an Apple, it's got the big screen, 21 inches. I've never had that big a screen before. And I go to turn it on and I get the wheel of death. And I'm like, what's going on here? And I'm just thinking to myself, well, this is a piece of brown stuff, like this is like, my MacBook Pro was awesome. I
For
either
11
Apple has gone
years.
right. So obviously either Apple's gone to pot for
Mhm.
the last, over the last 10 years and they're not what they used to be, or it's iMacs,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I was blaming the iMac, I was blaming Apple, even though I'm an iPhone girl as well. And but I was just literally, this is ridiculous. I need something. This is, so I went back to Palantir because then I could at least, at that point, I could at least, go in and one person at a time. And they had a new MacBook Pro. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm
I
going to take that one.
yeah.
Let's see if this one will work because I had good luck with that MacBook Pro. Let's see about this one. And I just took it. And because they said, well, ma'am, all we can do is totally wipe your iMac clean and start fresh. That's all we can do. We with everything else has been tried. I'm like, just do whatever. And it's going to take days. That's why I said, I'll buy that MacBook Pro. Just give it to me. I'll take it with me right now. So I started fresh on that MacBook Pro, and I loved it. I loved the new. I still have it. I'm on it right now, and it was this. This is how it's supposed to be. It's fast. It's beautiful. It has like all the bells and whistles, and it does exactly what I want it to do. So I guess that iMac is the one that's the crap thing.
Right.
Like that. This was my thinking at the time, and so I said to him, "Why? Why is my new MacBook Pro so fantastic, and that iMac is a lemon?" And so I finally get the iMac back, and they're like, "Okay, so take it home, and then we'll have to see what we're gonna do from there." And I took it home, and I turned it on, and lo and behold, there's no wheel of death. There's no freezing. There's no shutting down. Nothing. It actually worked the way it was supposed to do. And I'm scratching my head going, "What's the difference?
Right.
What's the difference?" And because, I'm learning and techie is not my zone of genius. And what I realized is that the only difference is that they had taken and transferred the old information from my old MacBook Pro to my new iMac.
Uh-huh.
And without realizing it, my beloved iMac had glitchy, broken programming that just
Ooh.
totally messed up the brand new amazing iMac.
So
Like,
now I'm totally getting the story with that P word, programming. I get it.
programming,
I get it.
right. So
Oh.
so then I thought, this is a really great analogy
It is.
of what happens, right? That you can take the best, most innovative product, computer
Uh-huh.
ever. Sorry, Windows guys. And and then you can but if you install glitchy programming in it, it's gonna run like crap.
Exactly.
And you can carry the analogy further. In other words, if you have virus or malware, what's that going to do to your beautiful, innovative computer?
Exactly.
If you have too many programs running in the background, it's gonna make it run slower and slower and slower, and it's gonna drain down your battery. And that is exactly what happens in our brains
Mm.
and our programming. In other words, we start out this beautiful genius of a baby, 100 billion brain cells,
Mm.
and and then over the next few years, well-intentioned family members download without our even knowing or being aware, and
Uh,
frankly, I don't think our parents are aware,
right.
download glitchy programming.
Yep. Exactly.
Not only glitchy programming, because generally speaking, our parents are broken too. I love
Right.
my parents,
Yeah. God bless
right?
them all. Yeah.
God
They.
bless them all. They do their best, and they're broken, just like their parents were broken. In other words, we have programming that has been downloaded and passed down through how many generations,
Absolutely.
and And on top of that, it's stayed the same with just more and more and more and more brokenness
Yeah.
in it. It never gets upgraded. What would happen if we never upgraded our computers,
Yeah.
our phones,
Yeah.
right? In other
You'd
words,
be stuck. You wouldn't be going anywhere. Right.
right. And
Yeah.
our brains, our computer brain is the same way. That it is we are trying to run space age technology. Our 100 billion brain cells have more computing power
Oh yeah.
than the best computers out there, really, truly, and yet it's running on
It's
primitive.
long on a few. Yeah. That's right.
Right.
Y-
So, everything that I realized was that it was that programming mixed with the trauma from the abusive childhood
Mhm.
that really just sucked the energy out, and so that even though I was doing everything right,
Mhm.
I couldn't function
Mhm.
properly, let alone as well as I should and could be. And so that's when I realized that those blocks that I just mentioned,
Yep.
your programming, and I tease out your fears and your victim patterns and how you respond to trauma,
Mhm.
are the biggest barriers that are blocking our success in all areas of our life, not just health and energy like burnout,
Yeah.
our career, our wealth, our relationships,
Mhm.
our personal life.
Yeah.
It's what blocks over 90% of people from making lasting change in their lives, no matter how well intentioned they are. It's not that they're bad, stupid, or lazy.
Right.
It's just they've got glitchy programming
And you know what?
and it's the energy vampires.
Yeah, and I love how you draw the analogy between that glitchy computer programming and what we've got. And I just wanted to add to you know, from what we learned from our family, but it's other authority figures too, like our teachers
Yes.
and you know the priests or the ministers at church or you know daycare or wherever you interact on life in life, we get the thoughts, patterns, and behaviors that create that glitchy programming. And it's nobody's fault. So that's another big thing. Eh? As soon as sometimes
Yes.
I find when you start talking to people about this, they get all guilty. And it's like, it's not your fault. It's just
Mhm.
having that awareness so that you can move forward. And another thing that I loved that you said was addressing that transgenerational stuff. You know, it's not even
Mhm.
your parents, it's their parents and the parents before them and all of their collective experience. Right. So it becomes a
Absolutely.
big deal. And I don't think
Mhm.
my clinical experience, nobody jumps this fence. Like nobody gets away with this. It just is. It's just a part of us, right? It's a part of something that we need to address to truly heal, right?
Right, and we can break the cycle moving forward.
Right.
Very, very important.
Mm,
And I loved how you highlighted the trauma because when in my Retrain Your Brain boot camp, I spent a whole week talking about, and well, not just talking, helping people through release their emotional responses to trauma, and the not just emotional, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic responses to trauma, and not just personal trauma, the
Right.
traumas that you may not even know that you have. In other words, your parents, your grandparents, everyone around you who, as you said, socialized you, nurtured you, had their traumas, and they unconsciously downloaded into you their fear responses.
Right.
For instance, just like prejudices, which is a form of fear, right? And now with research, they know, and I've coined this epigenetic PTSD, which is where you don't even have to have contact with them, to your grandparents, your great grandparents, your great great grandparents, and so on,
Hmm.
that it actually, the trauma that they experienced and suffered changed their DNA, so that it literally gets, it modifies the DNA so that it gets passed down in your genes. So your fear responses. So if you ever wonder, like, why am I so afraid of closed spaces? Why
Yeah.
am I so afraid of snakes? Why am I so afraid of water? Why am I so, right? That can be epigenetic. And it also has very real and documented physical impacts
Mhm.
on your health and energy in your life. Like they've shown with American Civil War POWs, they looked at the descendants of the POW soldiers in the American Civil War,
Mhm.
and showed that the ones that were born after
Mhm.
that had a higher mortality rate than their siblings. So
Right.
it wasn't even just that it was the same household. The only difference was that they were born after. They also showed it with the Dutch famine descendants in the, after the Second World War. Same thing, that they had far more illnesses and higher mortality rate than their siblings that who went through the Dutch famine as well.
Right.
And you'd think that they would have been impacted as much or more, and yet it was the descendants. Now, it's so trauma, physical trauma, mental trauma, emotional, physical, spiritual, energetic, all impacts you and changes your DNA. So that's why it's so important that you break the cycle, not only for yourself, how about for everybody going forward?
Absolutely.
If you are at that stage. So, very, very important, because I know you and I have discussed about that trauma is at the root of most major illnesses,
Yeah.
right? Because of the stress that it causes, physical, mental, and emotional, and also because of we keep living it,
Right.
right? We're the only animals in the whole
We
world.
replay it and replay it, right?
Yeah, so it's like we're continuously living it on a broken record. It's like Groundhog Day, that movie, like
Yeah.
over and over and over and over and over again, right? And so we unconsciously do it to ourselves, and so that's why it's so important to heal, because it's like you not only suffered the very first time, right? You're continuously suffering. So you're in this endless loop where you are in survival mode over and over and over and over again, and it's impacting your physical health, your energy, right? And your brain power, and
Oh, yeah.
right. So because when you're under stress, right, it has very physical impacts on, like, it ramps up your cortisol hormone, which is one of your stress hormones, which causes increased inflammation. It
Mm.
depresses your immune system so that you have increased viral infections. Do we know a virus that we need to be strong against? Yeah, go figure, right?
Right.
Increases risk for cancer.
Mhm.
It increases your autoimmune, risk for autoimmune conditions
Indeed.
like multiple sclerosis,
Hmm.
and it's draining your energy so that you can't heal,
Exactly. Yep.
right?
And
So it's, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, just so
yeah,
your head
no, and
knows.
I'm just loving all your words. I just wanted, can I share just a little
Yeah.
story of my own? And this is
Mm,
to the transgenerational PTSD, I think. And I hope I can say it without crying. I already hear it in my voice. But my father was a survivor of World War II. And even though
mm,
it was German, he suffered greatly at the hands of of Hitler because he was in a part of Germany that was treated the same as he was treating the Jews and the gays and other people that he didn't like. And so my family basically lost everything and had to leave. They were driven out of their homes. So all this stuff about Ukraine right now, oh
Mhm.
my God, it is triggering me like crazy. Like I just can't watch the news. I can't watch those people being driven out of their home because it's traumatizing me all over again. And I didn't experience that. That was my dad's experience. But I'm witnessing it, what's going on now, as if it were my experience, and I'm having the same reactions, and it's kind of blowing me away at the same time, you know?
Exactly, and thank you so much for your vulnerability and sharing, Terry. I know it's not easy, and it helps others to know that they're not alone,
Mhm.
right? Because we all have, like, these
Oh yeah.
visceral reactions,
Mm.
and the thing is, you can say, "It's not even mine," or is it? Right? Because it's
Right.
your DNA. It's been transmitted down. So that when you have that visceral reaction, I had, a friend who was African American say that he drove past he was I think he was from California, but he was in the southeast of the states, and he drove past a cotton field, and he used those terms. "I had a visceral reaction to seeing the cotton,"
Right.
right? So, in other words, it's there. So when you look at it's not just your personal trauma and PTSD, your intergenerational PTSD from your parents and grandparents, everyone who raised you. It is also your epigenetic
Yeah.
PTSD. So whether it's Holocaust survivors, whether it's African American slavery, I'm part Aboriginal. My ancestors were forced marched along the Trail of Tears. On the other side of my family, my grandfather was called a home kid. He was an orphan in the UK, and the UK, in their wisdom, decided to save money, and they emptied out the orphanages and sent them to the colonies
Oh, of
as
course.
indentured servants. So my grandfather was 9 years old. He had already lost his parents,
Yeah.
and he and his brother, his older brother, were split up and sent to different countries.
Yeah.
And so can you talk trauma? So whether you know what your history is or not,
It's
guaranteed there's trauma
something
that is
there. Yeah.
impacting you
Yeah.
and dragging your energy down, sucking your energy out like a dementor
Yeah.
that you're not even aware of, and it can set you up for failure
Yeah.
and crash and burn just like it did me.
Right.
Mine was a physical condition that caused me to lose consciousness. It could be an autoimmune condition like MS.
Right.
It
Absolutely.
can be diabetes, it can be cardiovascular disease, it can be cancer, right? And so it's and so that's why I'm so happy that you're taking the boot camp starting next week, by the way,
That's
Terry,
right.
because
And I am.
so we can help you with this, and I'll because the whole idea is to give you the tools to help heal yourself by
Exactly.
releasing these energy vampires
Yeah.
so that they no longer can impact you. It's not like you forget about the nasty traumas that ever happened to you. It's just that you divorce the emotion.
Right, you disconnect, you're
In other words,
able to emotionally
right,
disconnect from them so they don't
right,
have that influence over your stress response, which then has the influence over your physicality or your health or disease, right? Did you know that
absolutely.
stress, so you know that I've had MS for 46 years, 47 years almost. And
Mm,
since it was first named in the mid 1800s, MS has been a condition that's associated with stress. And
mm,
so it's not okay at any age, whether you're in your 20s because that's a more stressful time or in your 30s at the peak of your career, it's not okay to let stress run rampant at any time because it
no,
causes disease. Period. Whether
mhm,
whether it's autoimmunity or blood sugar dysregulation or hormone dysregulation, it does it all, right? It's a really non-specific threat to our health.
absolutely, and that's why Dr. Hans Selye, the father of stress, when he did all the research showing the physical impacts, he literally called it the general adaptation syndrome, the
Exactly.
general.
Yeah.
In other words, he said that no matter what the stress is, physical, mental, emotional, chemical, environmental, you name it, temperature even, it if left long enough, it causes the
Mm,
same degeneration in the same systems, like,
yeah.
in other words, the same diseases, and and yeah, I totally hear you,
Mhm.
Terry, because when I put myself through school, and especially, like, in my first degree, I was, like, what they call those, like, nurses' aides, I guess they'd
Mm,
be PSWs now, and so that's how I worked my way through school, and I would go around to people's houses, and I happened to have a number of clients who had MS,
mm.
and it really wasn't understood at the time, like, it was almost like AIDS, like, they were like, "Can you catch it?" Like, they had no idea, like, and so every time I went in to help my clients, I'm like, "I don't know if I'm gonna catch something here," right? It was a scary time,
Oh, yeah.
and then they started saying, "Well, maybe it's has to do with the vitamin D because it's more prevalent above the whatever 15th parallel," and now they're realizing that it may be have its roots in Epstein-Barr virus, EBV, and no matter what starts it,
Exactly. It's what
right?
perpetuates it. Yeah.
It's the it's like what came first, the chicken or the egg? You had to have some sort of depressed immune system
Mhm.
for EBV to take hold.
Yeah.
Then EBV, the virus itself, causes a physical stress on your body,
Yeah.
which then depresses your immune system even further and creates
Or
dysfunctions in the immune system.
dysregulates that immune system, right?
Dysregulates,
Regulate.
makes it go wonky is
Yeah.
my highly technical term, so that it then starts fighting parts of your body, like
Right.
your neurons, like with
Yeah.
multiple sclerosis, and so I actually have, I mentioned to you, Terry, that I had a client, Bob is his name, who
Yes.
took, the Retrain Your Brain boot camp last summer, and, he's a busy CEO. He's like not CEO, he's C-suite. He's chief technology officer, chief information officer. He's like senior vice president, all this stuff, right?
So
He's got a lot going on.
yeah.
And I didn't know until he posted a video testimonial on LinkedIn that he had also had MS for the last 20 years. And he said, I started taking Dr. Irene's Retrain Your Brain bootcamp for burnout, and not only did it help those, he goes, I've been on medication for years with MS, I'm sure you know, like, the whole list, and there were always things like he says, "I couldn't feel my hands," right? I
Right.
couldn't hold a coffee cup well because I couldn't feel my hands, my face would droop, I'd get tingling on my face, things like that, trouble walking. He goes, "Within days of starting to take the boot camp,
Mhm.
those symptoms started clearing up
Yeah.
to the point where they're almost non-existent now." And this is what I I'll say I had to. I read, I didn't even know, like, I was watching his video testimonial on LinkedIn, and I, like,
Crying
basically called him,
probably.
"Bob, I never knew." And he goes, it's a miracle." And I said, "Thank you, and no,
Right.
it's not a miracle,
Well,
it's just energy efficiency."
I love that, and
All
you use that phrase in your speaking a lot. I love that
yeah,
phrase, right? Because
yeah,
where are we I actually do energy retrieval exercises with people sometimes, but our energy, yeah, it's about calling it back and making it efficient. Well,
right.
I'm super excited about doing your boot camp because even with meditation, like if I'm having a long
Mhm,
day, I can just sit and do a 15-minute meditation even, and it's sort of like an energy efficiency exercise, right? All of a sudden, I can stand up and I can move a little bit better. Sometimes a lot
absolutely,
better. Like if I do a 1 hour meditation, it's kind of like a whole body reboot, you know?
absolutely,
Yeah.
and that's why I love teaching what I lovingly call SOS tools. In
Mm,
other words, because even though I teach meditation, and I gave you some of mine, you'll have to tell me how they
yes,
work.
they're beautiful.
Um,
Can I
Thank
share
you.
them with our community?
Well, I'll give you the links to
Okay.
share them,
Okay.
okay? I will do that. We'll make sure that we get those to them. And so, yes, I teach meditations. I have, like, 11 meditations on the app Insight Timer, and over, I think,
Mhm.
155,000 people have benefited from them, which makes my heart sing.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
That's beautiful, and a lot of them are sleep meditations because that's so important, and at the same time, when you're under stress, when you're in survival mode,
Mhm.
right, which is our hardwired response, fight, flight, freeze, or faint, meditation's not the time to do that.
Right.
Because you're either like you're in Hulk mode, like,
Yeah.
"I need to smash something. I don't need to, like, sit down and meditate for an hour. Hell no."
Yeah.
Right? Or you're, like, worried about and anxious, right? So you're zzz, your mind's just going a mile a minute, and you're like, "I can't stop my brain to meditate. I can't." Right? Or you're like one of those, like a sloth who faints and plays dead, and it's just like, "Yeah, I just fall asleep every time I meditate. Wake up feeling better rested, though." Or, you'll be like the one who's paralyzed and you're just like, "My monkey mind chatter, I just can't stop my monkey mind chatter." Right? So, that's why I created a series of SOS tools that
Right.
can help in seconds, in half a minute, in a minute, in 5 minutes, in less than 10 minutes. Like, what can you do to quickly ground and center in the fastest, easiest, most powerful way possible so that it can calm those 5 alarm al 5 what is it called? 5 alarm fire things
Yep.
going off in your brain in your emotion center, your amygdala,
Mhm.
so that you can actually start to think straight again, so that you can start making good decisions, so
Yeah.
that you can feel motivated to take action on those decisions, so that you can see and get the results that you need to actually get to move you out of the
Mhm.
pickly situation that you're in.
Right.
So,
And
that is
that's another
the
highly technical term, pickly situation, but,
Yeah,
right? But that
yeah,
pickle situation is often people just being stuck, right? And
mhm,
I'm finding over the last 2 years, like people that have been doing all the right things have even let some of those right things drop away. And they're saying, okay, Terry,
mhm,
this is where I am now, you know,
mhm.
and they're stuck. So is that like a pickly situation? Does that fit into
Oh,
your,
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely, and I love we've created a new word, pickly situation.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, really quickly, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, Terry, you know all this, and I'll just quickly recap for your listeners
Definitely.
that when you are under stress, like we have been for the last
Mhm.
couple years at least, forget about, like, all the stress that we had before anyway,
Right.
and right, that's survival mode. So when we're in survival mode, we go into whatever we are hardwired to do. So, and we're no different than animals that way. So, a gazelle is hardwired to run, it's what it does best. And without thinking about it, if it, like, if a saber tooth, a lion starts to, like, run after it, it just runs.
Right.
It doesn't turn and
Make
fight.
it
That's
fun.
not its right. A honey badger, on the other hand, he turns and fights. He's like, "Bring it on!" Right? He goes into Hulk mode.
Right.
A rabbit shivers in in fear and is paralyzed,
Mhm.
just like a deer caught in the headlights is another one.
Yeah.
A possum or sloth, they just like faint and fall over and pretend they're play dead.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the four ways that animals go into survival mode. Right? They're hardwired for, and we are
Yeah.
no different.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong. There are those of us who go into Hulk mode.
Mhm.
There's those of us who are paralyzed, like like zzz, like with anxiety
Mhm.
and overwhelm, and then there are those of us who just, we're just frozen with fear, or we just grind to a halt and maybe we spend hours sitting on the couch, binge eating and drinking whatever,
Right.
and maybe at the most think, yeah, yeah, I should do that, but I'm not going to, right?
Right.
So those are the areas, and there's no right or wrong, and that there is no thinking involved. You literally go into that mode. You
Yeah.
shift into that survival mode in milliseconds
Yeah.
where your blood gets shifted to your bigger muscles so that you can run or fight, where your pupils dilate, your
Yeah.
chest starts
Yeah.
charts pumping, your heart starts pumping out of your chest,
Mhm.
right? That is all part of it.
Mhm.
And your thinking brain here in your prefrontal cortex behind your forehead literally gets wiped offline.
Right.
Why? You want that
You
because
don't
it's
want it.
not the time
You
to
want to get
stand
away.
and think.
Yeah.
Right, it's not the time to stand and think and go, "Huh, so would it be better for me to run away from that saber-toothed tiger, or should I turn and fight? Because
Exactly.
guess what? We're gonna be dead beat,
Exactly.
right? So so we want that in the beginning, where in milliseconds, split second, we shift into whatever survival mode we are hardwired for. There is no thinking. It's all emotional. It's all instinct. And our adrenaline ramps up,
Exactly.
right? So that, and the challenge is when that stress doesn't end,
Yeah.
right? Whether, whether the saber-toothed tiger just won't give up. And we're like, okay, I gotta keep going. I gotta keep
Yeah.
going. I gotta keep going. Because it's still survival. In other words, it's your the adrenaline only lasts a little while, and
Mhm.
then your cortisol hormone, your stress hormone ramps up, and it's not as good. It doesn't give you like the high performance octane
Yep.
fuel,
It just keeps
and
going, right?
it just keeps you going, and you keep going in the same mode that you
Yeah.
were before, and guess what? You're still not thinking,
And I think
right?
a lot of people that can relate to that just keep going, right?
Right, I'm just gonna I'm
Got to
in other
push
words, you keep
through, right?
going in whatever state you're in. So if you're ground to a halt, guess what? You can't get yourself moving.
Yeah.
If you're on a hamster wheel
Yeah.
I don't know what to do, I don't know what to
Yeah.
do, I don't know what to do,
Yeah.
that's what you're gonna continue.
Exactly.
If you're in Hulk smash mode, guess what? You're just taking on the world. You're like, you're just and
Angry and acting
unfortunately,
out and yeah.
right, in other words, like, Hulk smashes, like, everything and everyone,
Right.
even people he loves, because he doesn't understand, right? Because, again, there's no thinking, and it's that cortisol hormone, it's still survival mode, and it's at that point, your brain and your body are still what they're focused on is keeping you alive.
Right.
The challenge is we humans are the only animals that keep the stress going
Mhm.
by continuing to dwell on the negative stuff that happened, like our traumas,
Right. So
or worrying about the future,
yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
right? We are the only ones that that dwell on the past and
Yeah.
worry about the future, right? And let alone ongoing stuff
Y-
like the last couple years where it's the stresses are there anyway.
You know, I
Yes.
I did my first mind body training down at the Herbert Benson Institute for Mind Body Medicine at Harvard, and
Mhm.
they had a slide in their presentation there that I stole and I have used, in every presentation I've done ever, and it was about,
Mhm.
and Harvard, they don't do anything without double-blind placebo-controlled data to
Yeah.
support it, right? So this slide showed us that we spent 55% of our time in the past worrying about things that were already done, things that you can't change, things that you have no control over, things that are gone and done. We spent 45% of our time fretting about what's going to come, leaving, I don't know if I added up right there, but it's almost 50-50. And then 10% of our time living in the present moment, right? So
Mm.
running those old programs that have got us stuck in the past, worrying about the future, and not being able, in some cases, to be grounded in the future where life happens, where healing
In
happens.
the present, yeah, yeah. You're spending at least 90% of your time wasting your energy because you can't change the past, and 99.999% of the crap that you worry about in the future doesn't happen.
Going to happen anyway.
So there's 90%, according to your slide, of your precious energy that
Yeah.
you are wasting,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when you are continuously reliving the traumas
Mm-hmm.
that you even know about, let alone all the other traumas that are running in the background, like those programs on a computer,
Mm-hmm.
right? How much energy is that sucking out? How much energy are you wasting by worrying about the future?
Mm-hmm.
And when, if you were to take that, all that precious energy and focus it on your healing,
Mm.
how much could you heal?
No, yeah, absolutely. And I see it
Absolutely.
all the time. I see it in the people that, like, we talk about transforming MS naturally,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, we get people talking about this supplement or that supplement, or what do you take for that or for that. And it's sort of like, one of my personal missions in life is to remind
Mm.
people that it's not about the supplements. It's about everything you do first before you even have to take something. And this is certainly probably the most powerful thing. If you did nothing else, you could,
Absolutely.
you could, you can impact so much dramatic change in your body. So just to
Mm.
summarize, we've got this programming that could be our own. It could be things that are going on. It could be uh, uh, what I call transgenerational, you call intergenerational, but coming DNA down to us that's affecting our programming. Our programming then affects our experience of trauma and stress in the world. The stress response drives this incredible cortisol flood, if you will, that activates physiologically literally every system in the body. And
Mhm.
and in that whole process, not only are we physiologically activated, we're energetically activated, if there's a line between the two, which I know you and I could discuss to death. And then
Mhm.
and then we end up in a state of disease.
Absolutely, because the cortisol hormone, the whole stress response
Mm-hmm.
is designed to keep us alive in the short term, right? Outrunning that saber-toothed tiger. It's not thinking about the long term. It's not thinking about that cortisol hormone ramps up your inflammation and depresses your immune system and causes your blood sugar to spike and you to increase your weight and end up with diabetes, or increases your heart rate and your blood pressure and leads to cardiovascular disease, right? It's not worried about 20 years down the road. It's like, I need to keep you alive here right now, because guess what? Otherwise, there's not going to be a 20 years down the road.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, how many of us,
Mm-hmm.
and I can say me too here, right, have lived entire lives
Mm-hmm.
filled with trauma and energy shortages,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Yeah.
no wonder that we crash and burn.
Yeah.
So, as I said, whether it's the way I did, literally, or
Yeah.
whether you crash and burn with MS.
Right.
And the key thing, and this is the part that I love, is that there is hope.
Oh,
There is help,
there's
right?
nothing but hope,
And
right? This is the
right.
this is the new neuroscience. That's what you're talking about too. Is the new neuroscience, right? Which tells us,
Mhm.
which first of all identifies, oh, guess what? The mind and the body are connected, and then there are techniques uh, and processes that we can use to bring that connection together, and that's what your boot camp is about, right?
Right. And it's all about, again, love that term, energy efficiencies, right?
Right.
It's freeing up your precious life energy
Mm-hmm.
so that you can then direct it to healing yourself. It's not about, this is what I love doing this. I loved private practice
Yeah.
and I retired from that to teach this, because I'm all about, that old phrase, teaching a man how to fish and feeding him for a lifetime rather than feeding him a fish for a day and having him live a day.
Right.
Right. In other words, all I'm doing is teaching the tools and techniques and guiding
Yeah.
my clients, my participants in making the changes themselves, just giving them tool after tool after tool. And the final thing that, or the big part of that, is understanding, because I have heard people say, well, MS isn't healable,
Yeah.
right?
I've heard it
And
too.
because the scar tissue is already there, the neurons are already there. Well, I'm going to, with all the love in my heart,
Hmm.
call bullshit. Am
Right.
I allowed to say that over here?
Amen.
Okay. Okay. Because remember, I talked about my son,
Yeah.
catastrophic brain injury. He is literally, and I've seen the SPECT scans, he is literally missing a huge chunk of his left hemisphere of his brain, the left side of his brain. The neurosurgeons were correct that those areas were gone.
Yes.
There's like no brain tissue there. I've seen it. I cried when I saw the SPECT scan, and I still knew that neuroplasticity could change the story. And neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to change itself, to grow and to heal,
And to
and
adapt, right? To work around
to adapt.
that damage.
So So my son, who wasn't supposed to be able to walk, talk, or pass high school, does both those, and he's in his 4th year of engineering
Nice,
at one of the best universities in Canada.
right?
Yes, I'm a proud mama as I say that. He worked hard, and the point was, if he's missing, for argument's sake, about 25% of his whole brain, right? What can somebody do even if they have MS lesions
Yeah.
in their brain?
Plen
Like, is that 25% of their brain that's impacted?
Yeah.
Right? In other words, where there's a will, there's a way, and it all starts with belief and knowing
Yes.
that anything is possible. So, with all the love in my heart, I say to your community, if you don't believe me, believe Bob.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right? He didn't even expect it,
Mm.
and this is what happened, and it wasn't a miracle, and I'm not some holier than thou, like, "Oh,
Yeah.
believe in me and you'll be
No,
healed." No, you healed
you're a
yourself.
doctor. You're a medical doctor. You're a chiropractor.
That's what
You're an
that's what
acupuncturist.
I told Bob. It's like, "I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
You healed yourself."
Exactly.
But if you don't believe that it can help,
Hmm.
it won't.
Exactly.
It
Well,
won't.
sure. That because that's just more programming, right? That's just more
Yeah,
belief. You know, belief becomes biology, right? I'm a big fan of Bruce Lipton. I'm sure you are too,
I love
right?
it.
Yeah, same here. And so, yeah, that's perfect. Dr. Irene, this is a special, special, special pleasure to have you talking and
Mm,
with us and
thank you.
reminding us how stress and trauma impact disease and healing. Um, and it, what are the words you want to leave us with today?
I wanna leave you with a challenge,
Perfect.
and that is the challenge to change your belief around your condition and understand and recognize that it is not permanent, that there is hope, there is help, there are tools out there that I firmly believe in 20 years will be mainstream.
Nice.
And so it's your choice. It's your choice that you can continue living the same way you are now, or you can choose to make a change.
Yeah.
And whether you take my Retrain Your Brain boot camp or not
Mhm.
with Teri, because she's taking it starting on
Yay!
Monday.
And Mike, my community knows
And Mike,
too.
yes.
Yes, we're both doing it.
And Teri, you're taking it?
Yeah,
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
me too.
And but just start to make changes. So whether or not you choose to do the boot camp, start to make the changes. Start to really ask yourself, where have I been playing the victim?
Mm,
And we don't like to think about that. And victim just means, where have you felt powerless? Where have you felt like life was being done to you, right? That you had no choice, because
mm,
you always have choice and control. It may not be the choice you want, and you always have it. So if you believe that you are incurable,
mm,
you will be incurable.
mhm,
It all starts with belief and understanding that the choice is yours to make, and to find whatever tools resonate with you. I'm not some holier than thou that says that my way is a highway and it's the
mm,
only way,
mm.
because that's not the case. I know you do amazing work, Terry, and I'm looking forward to having you benefit from our boot camp, just as I know that you help so many other people. And it's okay to admit that you need help, right?
Oh yeah.
Right? When we were talking and you were like, "I need this,"
Yeah.
right? It's just the reality that guess what? Life happens,
Yeah.
and we all have setbacks, and sometimes we're too close to ourselves, right? We can't see the forest for the trees.
Right.
So that's where having that guide, and I've had to have guides, I've had to have mentors and coaches
Yeah.
and
Both
others
do.
help me.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
understand that you're not alone.
Good.
Understand that you're not alone, and make the choice. Make the choice. That's the challenge, is make the
Mm,
choice to
perfect.
take back control of your life.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Irene. Make the choice
Thank you.
to take control of your life. And if you were very humble in talking about the boot camp, but Dr. Irene has a boot camp starting. I know it's last minute, but Mike and I signed up for it yesterday, and I thought, hey, you know what? I've got to let you guys know about this too. So that's what this is all about. Dr. Irene is starting a new one on Monday. So we'll put the details in the group, and we hope to see you there. And
Absolutely, and I gave a 20% promo code
nice.
just for Teri,
There you
just for
go.
Teri's community.
Nice. So you're going to get 20% off uh, to to go through the program. And from the testimonials I've seen, from what I know about Dr. Irene, it's one of those things that will be a game changer for sure. Thank you again.
Looking forward to seeing you.
Yeah. Take care.
Take care.